me pull this comic. This is an old meme from Shen Comics way back in the day. Many of you probably know it. It's a comic where Shen says, "My bike got stolen recently. I was pretty bummed out about it. But I think whoever stole it was probably more happy to get it than I am sad to lose it. The total happiness in the world increased. So whatever." And he walks away. He got roasted so massively for this. People were making memes about like, my girlfriend cucked me the other day. I was pretty bummed about it, but the guy who cucked me probably was more happy and blah, blah, blah. And I feel like it's kind of this idea of people willing to accept the detriment because the reality is he's lying to himself. He's very unhappy that his bike got stolen, and the dude who stole it did not care about that bike at all and probably chucked it for $20. So he has to lie to himself to justify the problems that are happening without dealing with the problem at all. I think a lot of people were doing that and have been doing that for a long time. Basically, instead of trying to figure out how to get the grapes from the tree, they'd say the grapes are sour anyway, who cares?
I read this article once where a girl, she must have been living, I think maybe in San Francisco, said that she was having a problem locking her car and she realized that a homeless person was sleeping in it every night. And so then she chose not to fix her car to get it locked because ultimately she's providing this service to someone who is unhoused, whatever else, and like justifying the action. Although I think it would be fair if both of these circumstances, sorry, I'm stuttering tonight, to recognize that, you know, the violation of your property, getting it stolen or having someone break into your car, I guess if it's unlocked, it's not really breaking in, who knows, is unpleasant and is not something necessarily societies want to encourage.
Well, so let me elaborate on this. As you said, you made a great point. You're not really loving your neighbor if you're tolerating them doing bad things. If they're hurting themselves, if they're hurting others, even in indirect ways or in ways that will only manifest in the long term. What this guy's saying by saying whatever and walking away, that person's going to steal someone else's bike. The amount of unhappiness is going to dramatically increase because he's going to go around stealing everyone else's bike. You need to stop them. If you truly love your neighbors, you would make the crime stop.
How do you, Kirk, particularly police your own behavior in regards to like adjudicating your neighbors' like behavior and your children's behavior and things like?
When do you decide to take action because
exactly.
something they're doing may be harmful?
Yeah, good question. I think my tendency is to think in terms of black and white, right and wrong, and justice. Although what I've been learning a lot as my kids are getting older is that relationship is everything with my kids, and my wife has been so exemplary with this. And man, investing the time in relationships with my kids, with my wife, with my friends, I find I end up having a whole lot more influence over them without trying to force that change by force or by telling them what to do, but influencing them. And either by the way that you lead your life, by the way that I'm overlooking an offense. But then at the same time, I want to get out there and I want to read books and read them in public libraries, even when libraries say that I can't do it, remind them of our constitutional rights and get a bunch of people out there to join me. So I think it kind of depends on the context. And am I talking about my kids or am I talking about people who are stripping people's rights in the public square?
So Patrick Bet David had given this great speech when we were in Miami that Ian referenced, where he said that tolerating this stuff, Christians tolerating it, led to where we are now with this wokeness. And then I gave a simplified version, which should not have been credited to me. But so I think your explanation actually, changes my view a little bit. Do you think that Christians in this country actually were not being good Christians by allowing these nefarious actors, the Marxists and things like this to come into our schools and government?
Definitely not a good move. Absolutely not a good move at all. I mean, my understanding is that our founding fathers understood the wickedness of totalitarian, authoritarian governments, and they didn't want that. And that's why we have such a unique constitution with a division of powers, electing our own leaders, the ability to vote, everybody equal under the law, no caste systems, limits on federal governments, and all of these things because they know that there is a zero tolerance factor for tyranny, and they put every check that they could think of in the Constitution to keep that from happening. And to do less than that, I think, is not to be a good person, not to be loving your neighbor.
What's the quote? The price of freedom is eternal vigilance. Is that it?
Maybe
something like that.
Yeah, something like that. And absolutely.
I feel like these social media algorithms are totalitarian and they're
They totally are.
proprietary. You don't even know what they are sometimes.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
like, how do you? I don't want to tolerate it. I'm in a state of tolerance right now because I don't know exactly how to get them to open up their code. I keep being like, free the code. If you're a big social network, you need to make your algorithms free. Software licenses open, things like that, so that we can AGPL3. I want access to your code so I can see what the algorithm is telling. Especially a Chinese company like TikTok. We can start there, make them free their code to operate in the United States. But I got to use the government to do that, and the government's part of the monopoly and part of the system right now. And I don't like manifesting that, but it's real. I can acknowledge the problem.
I think it's really hard to pinpoint the exact action we would need to take right now. Everyone's asking, what can I do? What can I do? And there's a lot of things you can do. There's a million different things to be done to make the system better. But I got to be honest, I think outside of having a family, that's the most important thing anyone could do right now. Anyone listening to this show and who's talking about like, how do we win a culture war? It's like, you have kids and you build that world by having kids and sharing your values.
Yes.
Outside of that, which is a basic function that humans should be doing and resisting these Malthusians who are like, don't have families, the world's going to end, population bomb. There was one really horrifying quote I read where someone said, I bought into the Malthusian lie and now I'm elderly with no family and it's miserable. And I'm like, yep. But a lot of people then say, as I mentioned earlier on in the show, yes, but the far left is indoctrinating kids, which brings me to the second most important thing outside of having family is what you're doing, Kirk. It's creating content for kids. It's creating culture to resist the indoctrination. You need to make sure that. So I read a story earlier, and I think I recorded it for Friday, so it won't be up for a couple days. But it's a family whose kid was taken away from them because the kid came home from school and said that they were trans, and the family said, "Okay, we'll talk to the school, we'll talk to the doctor." And the doctor said, "Oh, your parents don't want you to be trans? Okay." Called Human Services, seized the kid from the parents. That's what happens. We need, these are evil people who would do this. They want to sterilize this kid. The parents need to understand who they're up against. There needs to be a mechanism to support these families. And I got to tell you very simply, if your kid is being indoctrinated and confused in your school, you need to get them away from that school
100%.
and bring them into an environment where they can learn real values. The story I like to reference is this. It was a viral social media post where a guy said, I'll give you the simple version. His daughter started exhibiting this gender ideology stuff, said she wanted to be a boy. So he immediately just agreed with everything, told the school, oh, thank you so much for helping my son. A week or two later said, hey, I got a new job. We have to move, but thank you so much for all the help you've done. Can you give us recommendations for who we can pursue when we move to keep up the treatment? Brought his daughter to a rural community, put her in a private school, and within a couple of weeks, she was back to normal. Getting these kids away from the indoctrination is key.
Well, and this is to what Kirk's saying too.
Wow.
If you have a strong relationship with your kid, if you know who they are, you know, hey, I don't think that's what's going on here. I think that you're facing social pressure at school. I have a relationship with you where I really understand you. I think one of the things that happens is that there are parents who are sort of checked out. And so when the school says, oh, your kid is experiencing this, gender issue or whatever else, they're like, well, you spend more time with my kid than I do. So you must know something I don't. I believe you. And they don't have enough of their own personal convictions to fall back on to say, hey, maybe this isn't right. I think it's sort of like turning your kid over to someone else and waiting for them to be an expert on them.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.